Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions Podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and their professional teams struggle to find great capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy. Using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the deferred sales trust, is the best way to exit highly appreciated assets tax deferred so you can create, preserve, and grow your wealth. I'm your co-host, Pearson York, filling in for Brett Schwartz. In each episode, I'm joined by some of the best wealth, real estate, leadership, and professional individuals in the world to share ideas, deals, stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax deferral strategies simple, passive income plans achievable. We're also streaming on 𝗪𝗚𝗏𝑆ecrets.com, the Capital Gains Tax Solutions YouTube channel. And our next guest I'm very excited about because he has a phenomenal story and a phenomenal solution for international exchange for currencies. And so we're going to get a ton of value out of Tony Redondo. Tony, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Nice to meet you, Piers.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tony, give us a little bit of your background.
Okay, so I've been in banking and finance since 1985. Worked for 17 years in the City of London for a number of banks involved with general banking, merchant banking, property, finance, and then started to specialize in foreign exchange prior to the introduction of the euro in 97 to 99. Then worked as a day trader, then specialized, worked as a trader, as a senior trader in a couple of the UK's big foreign exchange brokerages before seeing a gap in the market and launching Cosmos Currency Exchange in 2020.
Awesome. Okay, so there's and what is Cosmos Currency Exchange?
Okay, so what Cosmos Currency Exchange does is it provides currency payment solutions for clients. Now we can deal with private clients, we deal with charities, we deal with businesses from sole traders to partnerships to limited companies. And what we do is we give clients access to over 35 currencies around the world, and can enable that client to send funds to and receive funds from over 50 countries around the world.
So how are you guys different from like the apps like Wise or something like that?
Wise,
or PayPal?
Yeah. Stripe, Payoneer. Yeah, there's lots and I mean, it's very interesting. There's a very, very competitive marketplace, extremely competitive. With banks, apps, and hybrid brokers. But with the Internet of Things, what has happened in my industry is over the course of the last 20 years, virtually everyone has moved away from relationship-based business models to transaction-based business models, moved away from providing a personal service to clients having to self-service on some kind of automated system, whether it be an app or a chat box or a platform or any combination of the above. What we've found is the problem with that approach is that it's not the technology. The technology is very clever, is very advanced, and is only going to get better. But here's the rub of the green. The issue is the currency exchange rates on fiat currencies change every 3 seconds, night and day. So that's 28,800 changes every 24 hours. However fast the technology is, and it's a reactive business model. All that happens is if Piers has got a client who's sending him money from outside the United States, whether they're in Canada or Australia or the UK or France or what have you, or you've got a bill to pay abroad, whether you use a bank or a hybrid broker or an online app, all that will happen is you make contact to the provider and they'll say to you, at this moment in time, the exchange rate between X and Y is Z. And then you've got 10, 15 seconds to agree to the quote or you don't. There's no guidance, there's no forward guidance. What we try and do is turn that on its head and say to each client, look, one size doesn't fit anybody because it's an average, okay? Every client has individual set of circumstances. I could deal with 1,000 clients, each selling a pound and buying a dollar, but they're 1,000 different people with 1,000 different attitudes to risk, with 1,000 different time frames. So what we do with each client is individualize it, provide a bespoke service where we do a discovery call with each client. We find out what they're looking at doing, the time frame they're looking at doing it in, and then we add value. And the way we add value is by actively monitoring the market to alert clients to opportunities within their chosen time frame. So, for example, all I did on Monday, the pound crashed in the Far East markets at Sunday night to an all-time record low against the dollar, the lowest level against the Australian dollar for 5 years, the lowest level against the Canadian dollar for 9 years, the lowest level for 2 years against the euro. So it was a fantastic opportunity for any client selling currency and buying the pound to maximize their return, or minimize the cost of buying those pounds, whichever way around they want to look at it. And we were able to alert clients and let them know and try and get a timing as right as possible, so that if you're buying currency, it will cost you the smallest amount possible. And if you're receiving a currency payment from a client overseas, you want to maximize your return. And that's what we help our clients do.
So do you guys then act as basically brokers between and advisors?
Yes, broker advisors, absolutely. So, you know, at the end of the day, advisors, and we can guide clients. We're not allowed under FCA, which is the Financial Conduct Authority, which is the UK regulator. Okay, we're not allowed to give advice as such. What we are allowed to do is guide the client. It's the client's funds. We're not investors. We don't speculate. We're not speculators. We're not investors. We help clients that have a requirement to move funds from one bank account to another bank account involving an exchange of currency. But we can and are allowed and do guide clients to let them know. Now, and one of the things I find most interesting after 37 years in the industry is when I hear somebody say that they can read the market. And if they can, they're an absolute genius. All I can tell you is I've been in the financial markets for 37 years. I've got a degree in financial studies, banking and economics, and it's an educated guess at best, because there are so many factors involved. But there are trends in the market, and there are things. I mean, for instance, when Russia invaded Ukraine in February, my phone ran red hot with particularly younger clients worried about the world was going to end and what the impact on their wealth and all the rest of it. And it wasn't a question of being old and blasé. It was a question of, this isn't the first invasion I've seen in my working lifetime. I saw the Soviet Union invade Afghanistan, you know, and leave with their tail between their legs 10 years later, and 2 years later, the Soviet Union was gone. You know, and therefore, one of the things you learn is life goes on. However dramatic the falls are, however dramatic this, you know, we were speaking just before, you know, going live about, you know, 2008, you know, and I certainly remember 2008. I remember 9/11. You know, there were big flashpoints, you know, the dot-com crash, I remember, long-term capital, you know, at the end of the 90s, I remember. So, you know, I've seen a few changes in my life, but I certainly have to say that the Monday just gone is probably right up there in the top sort of dozen days of my entire career in terms of volatility and sheer market mayhem.
Interesting. So what is the number one secret to being expert currency exchanger?
Know your history. If you'd asked me at the start of my career, I'd have said, come on, Piers, it's obvious, isn't it? You know, you've got to be good at maths and you've got to have an interest for economics. And of course, you've got to be numerate and you've got to have some idea of how the economy works, the free market economy works, and demand and supply and the effects and all. But actually, the older I get, the more important history becomes, because as Stephen Hawking, the late departed brilliant scientist, said that, you know, Homo sapiens are a clever breed of monkeys. And I wouldn't go that far, but if we are astonishingly clever monkeys. But nobody's perfect, and we're not perfect as a species. And one of the things we're most, I think, rubbish at is we don't learn from our mistakes. We just repeat them in cycles.
Yeah.
And so something happens, and if you know your history, you'll go, I remember that. And this happened. Doesn't guarantee it, but enough give you a steer as opposed to panicking like the rest of the market. I had so many clients selling the pound, buying currency clients, phoning me and communicating with me on Monday, saying, shall we get out before it gets any worse? And I said, do you have to do it today? No. Don't. You'll come back. You'll bounce back. Markets always go over the top and always go under and then resurface again. Always. They always over-exaggerate every market movement. The world will not end. Life will carry on. The UK is the 5th biggest economy in the world. We'll be okay. We'll be okay. So yeah, history, I think here is, apologies for the long-winded answer, but yeah, history, I would say, is really important because it gives you perspective.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so and are you getting a pretty bad echo right
now? I was about a minute ago, but not anymore.
Okay. So what are one or two strengths that you have that have led you to be successful?
I'm one of my personal mantras, Piers, is that say what you mean and mean what you say. And one of the decisions I deliberately took when I set up Cosmos in 2020, which is a pretty unusual thing for any business nowadays, never mind somebody in my sector, is I don't do pay-per-click. I don't market. 99% of my business comes from referrals. And that's a deliberate choice on my part. And because I've worked for some very big banks over the years, I've worked for some pretty big brokerages over the years. You know, one of my previous employers, I left them in 2016. Before that, they were spending minimum £50,000 a month on pay-per-click campaigns. The only thing I know about pay-per-click is unless you're in the top half of page one, there's no point being on there. So if you haven't got a budget to compete at that level, it's a fight you can't win. So instead of ending up spending what you do have to get onto page 5, which nobody will ever read because it's just the way of the world, I thought to myself, hold on, actually, if I look back at my career, I've been involved with big companies with phenomenal budgets, business development managers, newspaper advertising, media advertising, pay-per-click, SEO, the whole works. And consistently, the best businesses always come through word of mouth referrals. So why don't I focus on that? Because that's how I've always tended to work anyway. And the thing with referrals that I really like is you've got to earn them. You know, you've got to say what you mean and mean what you say. The client has got to get to know, like, and trust you. But when they do, then they become repeat business. Then they leave you nice testimonials that you can put on the website, so that when Piers looks at my website and doesn't start to think, how comes the last testimonial is 5 years old? What's he been doing where's he been for the last 5 years? You know? So there are lots and lots of advantages of the referral system. My industry doesn't like it because it's not quick enough, because everybody's always in a hurry. But I made a deliberate decision, and so far, touch wood, it's paying dividends.
Okay, so referrals and is your perspective on the long game is really what you're saying is the thing that's kind of separating you, because with that referral you need to be killing it in customer service, you need to deliver on your promises, you need to do what you say, And if you don't, right, you're not going to get those referrals. So it's that extra incentive. Hey,
Yeah.
if I don't do well here, I'm not going to get more business. So
Yeah.
let me ask you a question then. How do you come back from a mishap?
I think it's really, really important to just put yourself in position of the client, and then ask yourself, how would you like to be treated if the roles were reversed? And that will give you a very good steer on how to deal with it. Issues do happen, problems arise, but the client needs to feel that you're on the same side of the fence as they are. You might not always tell a client what they want to hear. That's another important thing. Providing a good level of service, looking after your clients, doing your best for them, doesn't necessarily equate to being political and telling them what you think they want to hear. Clever people see through that very quickly. And people tend to be very careful with their money, and quite rightly so, because for the vast majority of people, it's hard enough to earn it in the first place. So they've got to get to know, like, and trust you. One of the simple ways that I've done that, and God's honest truth, purely by accident, but obviously after 37 years in financial markets, my brain is pretty wired to trying to look for patterns, trying to spot patterns, so I can engage with clients, so I can add value. And since I've started Cosmos, I've started to realize that, I do a discovery session with each client. I monitor the markets within their chosen time frame. I'll let them know that I'm not going to bombard them with sales calls because I haven't got the time or the inclination, but I certainly haven't got the time. But I will phone them when the time is right. And then as the months went by, I started to see that in the last week of the month, I had more inbound calls from clients than the previous 3 or 4 weeks. And I'm thinking, there's a pattern here. Why? Why is this happening? So I started asking the clients, why are you phoning me? You told me that you want to do X to Y by the middle of October. The rates are rubbish. That's why I haven't phoned you. Why are you phoning me at the end of September? And the answer always was, well, yeah, because I saw in the news and because I'm being approached by other brokers and I thought you were going to contact me. Other brokers are contacting me. And then you say, okay, hold on a second. Listen, it's just simple economics. When you work for a big firm, you've got targets to hit. It's coming towards month end. So they need to hit their targets. Cosmos is 100% owned between myself and my wife. We don't have outside shareholders. We don't have investors. We don't have outside board of directors to waste our time in office politics with. So I'm 100% dependent on referrals. I need to earn them. And if that means saying to myself, if it was me, would I do it this side of the end of the month just because it's this side of the end of the month? The answer is no. Then I don't pick up the telephone. I don't alert the client, and I'll let it go until the rates are as best as they're likely to get, and then I make an educated guess, and then I'll let the client know. And but the other thing is to be very solution orientated. Again, because of my banking background, most clients' problems are down to the banking of the transaction, not the transaction. So, for instance, a UK exporter would typically, their accountant will tell them, go to your bank, open up a currency account so that you can collect the dollars from your clients in the United States or Canada or Australia or wherever the clients happen to be. Your invoice then goes out to those clients with the dollar details that you've opened up in the UK. Pain point number one is the banks never do anything for nothing. So that means that there's been a cost to you in opening up that currency account. But what you don't realize most of the time, because it's not your business to, and the days when there were bank managers there to advise you are long gone, is that when that invoice gets to the United States, you're asking that client to send their dollars, to a dollar account in the UK. That automatically strips out online banking. The only way to do that is to physically visit the branch. fill out a SWIFT international transfer form, pay the bank $50 to get the monies moved across to the UK in settlement of that month's invoice. So imagine the phone calls I got as I opened in 2020 when the second and third lockdowns came and the banks were shut.
Yeah,
you had that ludicrous situation where in the 21st century, a transaction between the biggest economy in the world and the fifth biggest economy in the world can't be done, can't be banked, it can't be paid. But there are always solutions if you look hard enough for them, and we came up with our own. So we can give our clients access to free local collection accounts we have at the moment, US dollar account in New York, a Canadian dollar account in Calgary, Alberta, and a euro account in Frankfurt, Germany. So that any client of ours based in the USA, Canada, or Europe, or any client of one of our clients based in those three jurisdictions, don't have the hassle of having to pay bank fees to get their euros or Canadian dollars or US dollars across to London. They can just do an online banking transfer, local online banking transfer, free of charge, takes 20 minutes, and the bill's settled. And then we repatriate the funds back to the UK through our banking lines and monitor the markets and convert those currency payments to sterling within the client's chosen time frame.
Awesome. So solutions orientated, very much so, putting yourself in the client's situation and treating them basically how you would want to be treated in that situation.
And one of the things that I found throughout my career, even though this mode of working is gone out of fashion completely, I try to do it as much of it as possible within the constraints of working in the industry before I set up on my own. Now there are no constraints. And one of the things I've found, Piers, is that clients, if you treat people well, they're incredibly loyal. Incredibly loyal, amazing. Really go out of their way, because in a way, it's so rare these days for people to have somebody else's back, to be able to say, look, you know, it might be month end, but the rates are rubbish. You've got until November. Don't worry about it. Like people buying US dollars at the moment. You know, up until Monday, the pound dollar exchange rate has been at a 37-year low for weeks. Moved between a 35-year low and a 37-year low. And then the markets open. We had the not so mini budget in the UK on Friday. The markets reopened on Sunday night in the Far East. And what happens? The inevitable happens. The pound crashes to an all-time record low against the US dollar. Virtually got to parity, which is insane. But unless you have to do something this month or in the first few days of October, why? Because anybody with a modicum of knowledge knows that on the 8th of November, you've got the midterm elections in the States.
Yeah.
Chances are the Republicans are going to take both houses of Congress, or at least there's a reasonable chance of that. What happens then is that any legislation coming out of the Biden White House can be blocked. The markets hate political uncertainty above all else. Therefore, the dollar should get hit as an aftermath of that. It's not guaranteed, but it's hard to see how the pound is going to be weaker post 8th of November than it is right now.
So that brings me to this question. Like, what are you seeing from a world economic perspective that's affecting the different currencies, and how are you hedging? How are you capitalizing? How are you making money right now?
I think fundamentally, from looking at it again from my client's point of view, it's never been easier to export. It's never been easier because there are so many payment solutions out there. There's so many online apps out there to help you. And then, of course, the big change pre-2020 to now is technology like Zoom. Because one of the things that delayed me starting up Cosmos is that we live in a really lovely part of the UK, the extreme southwest of the UK, an area called Cornwall. It's lovely, but it's rural. And face-to-face networking pre-COVID was quite frankly a pain because it is so rural. It just takes so long to get to any urbanization and in any city worthy of the name, even by UK standards. And then, of course, within months, everybody goes on Zoom. And I started to have Zoom online networking meetings with clients all over the globe. And now there is no demand, or there is a demand for face-to-face, but it's purely an add-on. The standard networking model now is Zoom, which is great because I could be in Cornwall in the UK, you can be in the United States, another person could be in Australia, another person could be in the Middle East, and it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So that's a very interesting concept. In terms of other ways we help clients, particularly with exporters, is again, we have access to an instrument called a flexible forward contract. So for instance, if you are a US exporter and you know that you're virtually at an all-time high against the pound, you're at 21-year high against the euro, but your clients in the UK and the European Union are not going to pay you for 3 months, 6 months, the other side of November the 8th, you have two choices. You either carry on as if nothing was happening in the market and take your chances that the rate's still going to be okay for you when you actually receive those euro funds or sterling funds. Or in return for a 10% security deposit, you can enter into a forward contract, forward up to 12 months ahead in return for a 10% deposit, and then you're fixing the exchange rate on either virtually an all-time high if you're dealing with pounds or a 21-year high if you're dealing with euros. So again, is by discussing things, as I said earlier, technology is very clever, and I'm sure the robots will one day take over, but we haven't got there yet. And unless your currency requirement is very plain vanilla, there are severe restrictions to using an online app. As good as they are, because the technology is better than the bank's technology, is quicker, they have less overheads. So there are advantages to using online apps to the banks, but you can't get any guidance. You can't get any feeling for, should I do it now, should I wait? And bank managers don't exist anymore, but hopefully at Cosmos, we plugged that gap to a little bit.
Yeah, that makes sense. Awesome. All right. Well, we're coming up on our time here. So I want to get you into the lightning round and then we'll get you out of here. So you ready?
Sounds painful, but I'll give it a go.
What's your favorite book?
My favorite book, oh goodness. It's quite a recent book. It's called The Master and His Emissary. And it's about the two hemispheres of the brain, right brain, left brain.
Awesome.
And it's really very, very interesting. Really interesting in psychology.
Yep. Okay. What's your favorite leadership quote?
I guess say what you mean what you say. I'm not entirely sure who said it originally, but whoever it was had it on the button.
And what are you most curious about right now?
Whether the new UK government is going to hold its nerve and ignore the media and the howls of protests and the vested interests like Margaret Thatcher did in the early 1980s when she came up with a completely radically different Thatcherite economic policy. There was a famous letter written by 364 economists to the Times of London calling her all the names under the sun. She was strong enough to ignore them, and it completely revolutionized this country economically for the better. Was she perfect? No. Did she make mistakes? Absolutely. But economically, there was definitely a before and an after Thatcher in terms of the economic prosperity in this country. I just hope the current government are strong enough to emulate that.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's going to be interesting. So cool. All right. Tony, any parting words?
Any parting words? life, I remember my granddad saying to me when I was a kid, for anything to work, any relationship, whether it's business relationship, whether it's friendship, family, marriage, whatever, to work long term, it's got to be fair to both sides. And I think the financial services industry is doing itself a disservice, and certainly doing a disservice to its clients by this attitude of zero-sum game, because life isn't a zero-sum game. You know, instead of me and you arguing back and forth about a slice of cake, why don't we just build a bigger cake?
Yeah.
Not difficult.
Just bake another cake.
Just make a bigger cake.
Love it. Awesome. All right. Well, Tony, thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure to interview you, and just, I love the brilliance behind a lot of what you're talking about, the relationships over the transactions, right? The integrity, and the discipline to do what you say and mean what you say, to generate your business, and your solutions oriented mindset on things. So it's been an absolute pleasure. So thank you so much for coming on, and thanks everybody for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, not having a clear plan is the enemy. Using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the deferred sales trust, the best way to exit highly appreciated assets tax deferred, so you can create, preserve, and grow your wealth. Please rate, review, subscribe. If you guys are interested at all in connecting with us at Capital Gains Tax Solutions, go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. You can sign up for our weekly webinar every Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. You can learn about the deferred sales trust, some awesome tax solution strategies, meet people like Tony who are consistently on there with different ideas and things, so you can create, preserve, and grow your wealth. We'll see you guys on the next one.